My name is Scott Andrew Hutchins, and I ran up $60,000 in student loan debt at the College of Staten Island, and I couldn't find work. I'm medically limited to a desk job, and eventually I got evicted. And when I was concerned about the conditions in the shelter system, I discovered Picture the Homeless on October 4th, 2012, and I have been an active member ever since. At Picture the Homeless, we have two major committees, one on civil rights and one on housing, and I've primarily been involved in the latter. We also do voter registration, housing organizing academy education, and job and leadership development. We are founded by homeless people and led by homeless and formerly homeless people. We believe homeless people must be involved in every political decision that affects them. Picture the Homeless organizes to fight the root causes of homelessness, and one of the causes is a dysfunctional housing policy that prioritizes profit over community needs. The Department of Homeless Services budget last year was $950 million. Each shelter monthly receives between $3,000 and $4,000 for each resident, and the resident in turn receives a cot and a locker, maybe hot water, there was none this morning, and maybe some food. I didn't get breakfast this morning. So that's why we're trying to create and preserve truly permanently affordable housing in New York City for the lowest income New Yorkers, and Community Land Trusts are part of this. And so what a Community Land Trust is a nonprofit community-based organization that takes and controls to hold land in perpetuity for the good of the community. They act as stewards of the land and leasing it out to ensure housing stays permanently affordable, usually for a period of 99 years. And it's not specifically for housing necessarily. It can also be used for community gardens, community centers, arts venues. Commercial space is a major way that we would fund the Community Land Trust. We get a mom and pop business, and the revenue that they would generate would help to fund the lower income people in the Community Land Trust. And the purpose is to take the land off the private market, put it in the community's hands, and take the price of land out of the price of housing. And by putting it out of reach of speculators, housing can remain affordable forever. A Community Land Trust has a tripartite board of directors, 1/3 of which are the residents of the CLT, another third are residents of the surrounding community, and the last third is housing experts who are advisors, and that would include academics, public officials, and so forth. And every development member of a CLT has to abide by a social development platform ensuring permanent affordability. And there's a basic model, and it's very flexible and can be adapted to different communities' needs. It can be very conservative models that involve government input, and I understand there's one in Chicago where they're on a communistic model and they only accept gifted land. So our interest in Community Land Trust came several years ago. We tried to push the city to pass legislation called Intro 48, which would mandate an annual comprehensive count of all vacant property in New York City. And Christine Quinn seriously blocked this. She said it would cost millions and millions of dollars. She really wouldn't let it come to a vote. And she basically said there really aren't a lot of vacancies in New York. And Picture the Homeless counted the 20 community boards that we felt were most blighted by vacancy in New York City, and we found enough space to house 200,000 people, which is 4 times the current shelter population, and we did this on a budget of a little over $1,000. Because these properties aren't being utilized, we want to engage people from these communities to get involved in reclaiming land and make housing affordable for people in these communities. We held a couple of summits. The first one was in April and another in July, in which we actually formulated a coalition of progressive nonprofits, community members, academics, and homeless people called the New York City Community Land Initiative. This group has 4 work groups: education and outreach, case study, governance, and policy and legislation. And I've been actively involved myself in education and outreach and case study. And in the education and outreach work group, part of what we've done is to make some of these, we've met more than you're actually seeing, but a lot of that's part of what the case study group does. But a lot of these things that you're seeing, these are instructional materials that we collaborate with artists and graphic designers. And most of the ideas you see in these came from homeless people, some of whom have advanced degrees like I do. And it was basically us and staff and a couple advisors, and we met with these people, and the graphic designers created what you see here based on our input. And now we're starting a pilot project in East Harlem. East Harlem was chosen, well, first I want to tell you, we went to Cooper Square, which is an existing community land trust here, and what they did in 1959 was they started a mutual housing association, and that's what really grabbed people for the community land trust, because community land trust is only about land, whereas the mutual housing association actually deals directly with the buildings, and so that's what grabbed people, and they ended up with a community land trust later. And so we also worked with another group called Catch that actually involves several mutual housing associations in the city. So we chose to approach East Harlem because they're dealing with rent-stabilized housing that's expiring, and they're failing cooperatives and tenant-controlled housing such as HDFCs and TILs, which are at risk of falling into the hands of developers and into the private market. We also have a relationship with community groups and political allies such as Community Voices Heard and East Harlem Preservation. So we've begun the process of reaching out to residents and building relationships. And our eventual goal is to build a citywide CLT network that would support different CLTs around the city. We're trying to educate other communities and grassroots organizations. After East Harlem, our plan is to work with South Bronx, Bed-Stuy, and the rest of Harlem on CLTs so they can apply these ideas to the needs of their neighborhoods. And so basically, what Cooper Square did was they basically had decades of organizing, and they've had to do this continually because they've had issues, and it's not just something they did in the 60s, but it's something they're continually doing now. But the average income of a resident of Cooper Square, which is around the Cooper Union area, it's based around 4th Street, but there are other buildings throughout the Lower East Side. The average income of a resident there is $12,000, and they're paying $3,000 to $4,000 a month in rent.
400. $300 to $400.
$300 to $400 in rent?
A month.
A month in rent. Oh yeah, $300 to $400. Okay, yeah, $300 to $400 in rent per month in Manhattan. So our goal is to try to spread this around, try to basically acquire as much land as we can, and eventually basically provide housing for all residents, eventually defund DHS, and put all that money into community land trust so that we can abolish the shelter system and get everyone living in suitable housing, which is a human right. Thank you.
So, great. Well, that was another awesome visionary note to end the presentations on.